Hey. So we got Dave and we got Scott and Old Joe. And I think that's it. I think that's all
Hey
we got.
guys.
Anyway, we have I'm not sure how we want to do this exactly. I guess a combination of playing some of the video and looking at the transcript.
Sure.
So why don't you set this up for us? How did this whole thing start in chat? What was the? What do you remember?
Well, it's been a while, but as far as I remember it, I was okay. I just saw the title with evolution. It's like, okay, maybe this is a creationist stream or something. And he was talking about some evolution topic and mentioning some other people as like, oh, these people are so silly and etc. And they started talking about the populations thing and the nubs. I was like, okay, what is he talking about? And he started talking, okay, how did sexual reproduction evolve? And so I was like, okay, I'll start informing him how we think sexual reproduction evolved. And I guess one thing led to another, and I was, or some people in the side chat were like, let this guy on, let him defend evolution kind of thing. So yeah. And then I went on and we had our chat. It started kind of a hostile at first, and then we went into some I think it was like precept philosophy, and I really wasn't having much patience with it, so I just kind of went along with it.
Right. Yeah, you got along good when you went along with him.
Right. Yeah, that's the tricky bit.
Yeah. And the nice part about it is he did actually explain some of his thinking behind his presuppositionalism, and I got a better idea. I went on a stream yesterday and I had a talk with him, and I just asked him questions about Orthodox Christianity because I'm genuinely curious about it. And I got along a lot better with him, and I got a lot of information from him, and he actually calmed down. And he seems like a fairly intelligent, not a bad person. Well, he's a bad person.
Yeah.
He's a bad person because some of the political beliefs he has about women and transgenders and things like that. So he's a really bad person. And I told him that in a discussion we had a few days ago, where I said, he asked me for an example of what's immoral, and I said, you are immoral. You are bad. And he just okay. And he just, he never asked me why I thought that, so I would have told him.
He's let's just say he's not a bad person when you're on his good side.
Yeah, exactly. When you're, I guess that'd be a way to put it. Yeah, as long as you don't confront him in any manner, he won't kill you. Otherwise, God knows what he'll do to you. So I don't know. Anyway, let's see. So I'm not sure where this evolution thing starts. What was he talking about? Throws it all in a bowl, and his stream is like a bunch of dudes sitting around the witch pot. Who the hell is he talking about here? Is he talking about me?
Probably some other philosophy stream.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He does mention me quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they call me Old Balls, which I'm actually going to start using as my handle. Because, like my son said, he said, well, he's got a point. They are old. He's not lying about that. But I don't know why they would call me Old Balls. I don't know what it does for them. They love picking on anything that they can pick on. And when they get an elderly person, they will pick on his age. As we're seeing in, the election, right, on both sides, picking on Trump and Biden about their age. So here's the deal with that crew. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The commitment is Eastern Orthodox religion. And that's what my grandpa and grandpa were.
Oh, really?
Cosplay. A rational Christian would never accept JB's behavior as authentic in the faith.
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
Yeah. I think it is because
a sensible Christian, at least.
Well, yeah, and Eastern Orthodox, I think, is even, I don't know. They seem more spiritual to me because they're more in touch with the emotional side. And we're going to do a stream on my hangout with Jim Bob. Both of my hangouts with Jim Bob. We'll get into that.
Cool.
It's important to understand where they're coming from. The other important thing to understand is that they're not listening to anything you say. All they want to do, because they don't believe, they believe that in order to argue at all, you have to believe in God. So they're on the right side. And what they want to show you is that you have contradictory beliefs. So they will interrogate you. And that's what he was doing in the first part of the thing. But let's see, what could we, well, play this first part here and see if it, see if we can find anything that we can
I'll play some clips.
Yeah, we'll do this.
Oh yeah, and he mentioned Grayson's transitional fossil video for a little bit, I think.
Oh, okay.
Because that was where, because he was responding to them, responding to him of his video of Grayson's video. So
yeah, this denial of transitional fossils, I don't quite get it because I've seen a lot of them.
Yeah, they just dislike the term transitional because they understand the implications of it. They just want to hand wave it away or say, oh, it's just a bird, or it's just an example of interesting organisms pre-flood. Like that's like something they'll actually say, like just something God created for some reason.
Like the Ediacaran, right? Like you really think those things were around, those crazy ass planimals, I call them, on the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, it's kind of stretching it, but yeah.
Planimals? Yeah. Well,
some of them might have been plants, some of them might have been animals, but
they kind of acted like plants. Some of them, would actually stick on the floor and, and wave around. They didn't really.
Well, by that criterion, a lot of animals today would kind of be planimals because they're just sessile.
Yeah, like the sea slug. My favorite thing about the sea slug is Eric Kandel. He's a neuroscientist. Do you know what his joke is about the sea slug?
I don't think so.
Okay, he studies the sea slug, and that's where he got a lot of information about how the brain works. Oh. And the sea slug has a brain and it has a nervous system, and it floats around and it moves around. It's motile. And then it plants itself in the spot where it's going to, the spot it picks. And the first thing it does is it dissolves its brain. And he said it's a lot like university professors when they get tenure, which is kind of funny, I think.
I guess that's probably an inside joke.
Yeah, it's an inside joke. Yeah. If you get tenure, you no longer have to think or produce papers or do any work at all. Yeah. And, once you get tenure. Anyway, okay. I'm just going to.
Maybe I don't want to get tenured.
We'll do a little bit in the beginning here by give us some setup, and then we'll switch to the part where you come in. So.
Okay.
Because it increases the fitness. Yeah. Again, you're just going to keep reasserting, right? That it increases the fitness. What increases the fitness? How does the beginning stages of becoming non-hermaphroditic beneficial if you don't have the population to spread the thing? Right? You're making all these value judgments about increased fitness. Organisms aren't thinking about this. They don't have these terms. So what's actually happening? Not according to your chat. Are you going to just talk to my chat, or do you want to jump on?
So he's right there. He's got this. He's got a couple of ideas where that you could see something stuck in their brains.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to do this is because a lot of people probably have these misconceptions about evolution. One of them is like the irreducible complexity that it has to go from hermaphrodite, like a splitting cell, and it has to all of a sudden somebody has to develop a penis and somebody has to develop a vagina, and then you got sex, right? And
like one individual has two individuals have to become male and female simultaneously, otherwise it won't work.
Hovind. Yeah, that's what he says, basically. And then the other misconception that he's kind of bringing into it is this thing about, he uses the word ought here in a little while. Let's see, where is it here? Ought. Maybe a little bit forward.
Or even what he said there, like that, the organisms aren't thinking about this stuff. Well, of course they're not thinking about it. That's not what anyone's saying.
Yeah, and then he has it kind of tied up in this teleology, or this, they ought to become more diverse. And at the beginning, when the mutation started, and then there's his whole confusion over neutral, beneficial, and deleterious mutations.
Yeah.
And right at the outset, you could have done better in a few spots of educating, but you were like being interrogated, so you were probably a little surprised by his questions.
Yeah, I
highlighted like 5 spots where you said, "What are you talking about? What?"
Yeah.
And but anyway, those 3 kinds of mutations, that's on a gradual scale. Those are labels that we give, based on what's happening in the organism. There is no actual different kind of mutation, deleterious, beneficial, and neutral, right? Like a neutral mutation can end up being beneficial in a different environment.
Right. It just depends on the environmental context.
Yeah. And then, there's some other things that we'll kind of get into as far as populations go, and what happens with brown bears and polar bears.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We talked about that. How, he doesn't seem to understand how populations and speciation in general works.
Right. Yep. So let's see, going way ahead. Let me see here. So population.
Yeah, I probably could have done better in this chat. Like you said, I was kind of unprepared. His style of arguing.
Yep. So let's see, 41:17.
On and actually try to face me one.
Hang on a second here. Unfortunately, I've had to use a different browser because Chrome failed for me.
Oh.
So I don't have bookmarks on this browser. I got to go to the other browser, get the bookmark. Anyway, okay. Let's.
And you start having the rudimentary, like the rudiments of a moral culpability.
I think he's listening to Grayson's video right now.
Oh, okay.
Or Grayson talking.
Okay. So that would be a different subject. So,
yeah.
Where did you come in? So the question is, if we take, okay, let's see here. Grant a bunch of hermetic. I'm not sure. Where do you come in? Let me see here. Andrew. Okay. Yeah. You come in real shortly. So that's
for individuals.
Yeah. And it gradually just grows more complex as this.
Oh, we might get back to this. I don't want to keep this guy waiting. So let's,
Hello, can you hear me okay? Just reiterate your original question. Maybe I was misunderstanding it in a certain way. I don't know.
Sure.
So just say Dannykins if you want me to stop at any point.
Dannykins? Okay.
Dannykins, yeah.
I say, my ugly voice I'm listening to over the video.
Yeah. By the way, you can't see either of our icons because Restream has lost its shit. And this is a Rational Empiricist, Andrew. So
hello.
Who's in with
everyone
me?
In chat? Thank you for watching.
There are 2 of us.
Hope you're having a swell day.
A swell day, yeah.
Sure. My question is, well, I set it up in kind of premises. Is that
okay?
Premise 1 is that evolution explains and accounts for the diversification of living organisms. Yes?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. Premise 2, populations are expressions of diversifications of organisms.
Okay, I'm not.
Yeah. You see the problem? Like,
just the weird phrasing of it. Like, why does he have to put it in a syllogistic format?
Yeah, why is that a premise? Populations are expressions of diversifications of organisms. I suppose they are. I don't know.
And it depends what you mean by all those words.
Yeah.
Not sure what you
agree with
mean
that?
by that exactly.
That populations themselves, the existence of populations, would be a result of the diversification as a method, like a process.
Oh, okay.
That the
So what he's asking is if species, the diverse number of diversity of the entire, kingdom, right? If that's caused by, let's see, I don't know, populations are expressions. I don't know, but
I think he's like asking, do populations result from some underlying diversification process?
Yeah, right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. And that's kind of
populations themselves would be a byproduct of this diversification.
By having multiple individuals with like different traits, or like what do you mean by diversification specifically?
Well, let me ask you, is populations the way you see populations today? Does that demonstrate diversification?
So
I mean,
he's asking about the origin of species, right? Kind of.
It's hard to know what exactly he means because he keeps repeating the same question again without elaborating what he means exactly.
Features of okay. So if premise 1 is true, evolution explains and accounts for a diversification, and populations are a feature of diversification. I don't know. Let's
populations in between populations, yeah, in a genetic morphological sense.
Great. So populations, you agree with premise 2 that populations themselves are a feature of of diversification of organisms. Okay. So if premise 1 is true, evolution explains and accounts for diversification, and populations are a feature of diversification, then evolution must explain how populations as we see them today came to be. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. So the question is, if we grant the first life, we're not talking about abiogenesis. We just take the first simple life forms, right? How does evolution, the process that's often described mostly within populations, by the way, how does it describe and explain going from point A, simple cell organisms that maybe divide themselves, right? Or I'll grant a bunch of hermaphrodites. But still, that would have to be answered too. How do you go from simple to hermaphroditic?
Okay, so now he's going to ask the question about how sexual reproduction started. You want to?
Yeah.
Can you sketch that out? Like.
Yeah, I can try.
It's a tough one because we don't know exactly.
It involves because it involves a lot of steps. We think.
Right.
There's first, obviously, what bacteria do. Asexual splitting, basically, and then what some bacteria do today. Obviously, they recombine genetic material through like conjugation and other methods. So there is some kind of genetic recombination going on there. So there's a precedent for whole cells to come together, basically, and exchange genetic material.
Yep.
And I think there's some other, from what I've read, there are some other mechanisms for the process of meiosis itself, of the mixing and matching of chromosomes, basically, because that helps during homologous gene repair, as far as I know. Like it helps maintain it protects the cell from mutations. Ultimately, it's a mechanism for doing that. And then basically from there, you have okay, these individual cells are coming together and undergoing this process of meiosis and then splitting apart back into their normal cell lives. We see that in like paramecia and other single cell eukaryotes today. And then some of those cells would have to become slightly different and gradually lead to the formation of what we would call the egg and sperm cells. Which there is some diversity there as well. It's not like all sperm cells are like mammal sperm with the flagellum or things like that, and all eggs are held in uterus, or so there's a lot of diversity there. But then obviously the ones with these larger, what we would call egg cells, are by definition females. And the ones with these smaller, more energetically less costly to produce sperm cells, those are the males. And then so there's selection pressure there, obviously, from there. Like I said, there's a lot of steps involved.
And I'm guessing,
bear with me. If I kind of stumble with my words here, because it isn't easy to succinctly describe it.
I think my meiosis would have preceded the variation between male and female, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, the process of recombination and meiosis itself would have come before the split between male and female.
And the
body plans, I guess, or cell types.
The thing that he was missing is that each of those things, like starting with the horizontal transfer of genes in early prokaryotes, right, had to have some advantage, or something probably would have developed to stop that from happening. So that was common enough that it created an advantage in populations that those particular organisms that did that would continue, right? And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And
it's kind of, again, hard to describe the whole process there to someone who, like, it doesn't really seem like he actually understands the process of natural selection itself. Like he seems to have some fundamental misconceptions about, like, even what he was asking earlier about what does it mean to increase the fitness of an organism, or what is beneficial in this context. Like, those are kind of basic questions you learn in evolutionary biology courses in like high school or college. So.
Yeah, and I think starting right here is where he starts asking questions.
So it would be new information.
Okay.
Because they didn't have it previously. There was a certain change in the genetic sequence that then allowed them to have.
We've gone ahead about 5 minutes. So.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, okay.
That behavioral change.
Okay. All right. So in your explanation, right?
Okay, Danny,
there was an organism that was.
Is there a way to highlight Scott's comment, because it's actually a very prescient point here that I don't know if I covered in this conversation? Yeah. So right on, Scott. Yeah, they're like, look at sea anemones, for example. They undergo asexual budding some of the time, and recombine sexually other times. So depending on where the environment is presenting stressful conditions, for example. So yeah, it's not a mutually exclusive kind of thing going on here. It's not black and white. There's a lot of variation.
Yeah, there's probably a stage where two of the same cells, the same types of cells, merged and recombined their DNA, and then split again, right?
Yeah, like I said, you see that with modern, like, tiny single-celled eukaryotes. So these are steps that we observe in living organisms. Like I said, it's a lot of these questions about irreducible complexity and how did this evolve? How did this evolve? Would be answered, or at least plausibly explained to them, if they took the time to look at modern phenotypic and physiological diversity in living organisms and how those are connected to each other.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we do it.
Yeah. Especially like in the fossil record, like ideally we could see it in a fossil record with each fossil leading to another, but obviously we don't have that.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to combine different lines of evidence here.
And at some point, the single-celled organism grew a nub and it turned into a penis.
No. That's the way he thinks it happened.
My thumbnail for this show showed a nub. If you look up the nub theory, what you're going to come up with is apparently when they're trying to determine the sex of a fetus, there's a little nub that develops at about 15 or 17 weeks. And if it's at a certain angle, they can tell if it's going to be a boy or a girl. So, which I thought was interesting. And it's called the nub theory of something or another. And when I saw nub, I thought, oh my God, this is Jim Bob all over. So
I wonder if he actually got it from, I doubt it. Yeah.
No, he probably didn't get it. Anyway. Okay, let's see here.
It's limited to certain behaviors and traits. And then a mutation happened in the organism that made it possible to produce something that it wasn't producing before.
Yes.
Okay. So he thinks a mutation, like he thinks it's one mutation that makes an arm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a first real common misunderstanding among people who haven't looked into this deeply is that no, there's a mess of mutations that happen before a lot of this stuff happens. On the other hand, a regulatory area can change and you can end up with like a limb becoming a very different length or, so there are fewer mutations when you deal with the regulatory part of the genome in embryology that would affect the timing of how an organism develops that would end up with like one part of your arm being longer than the other or differentiation between the two parts of your arms.
Well, actually, technically speaking, like both arms would probably lengthen simultaneously.
Right, because they use the same packet, the same, they call them cassettes of information.
Right. Or sometimes like developmental modules or programs, to loose language there. But they're just these genes that control different aspects of the organism's biology. So there are a lot of mutations involved, but they don't have to happen simultaneously as you described there.
Yeah. Yep. And the same thing that produces a fin on a fish, some of the same proteins and the same patterns produce legs and arms. So I mean, there's this conservation between some of these genes, particularly Hox genes.
And obviously, organisms have evolved novel proteins over time from pre-existing ones. But I like how Dr. Dan has described it previously, is that you're not really like you said, changing anything or getting whole new genes for arms or legs or anything like that. You're just expressing these, like you said, highly conserved genes in just new developmental pathways.
Yeah.
And the organization there changes, but the fundamental building blocks themselves, one way to put it, don't themselves change that much.
Yeah. And in embryology, there's 4 dimensions. There's the 3 space dimensions and time. And some of these things, the expression of these genes take a little more time. And if that's the case, you'll end up with a slightly, I think, longer arm in some areas. Some of the bones develop, over time. And it's all like modern embryology and some of the modern ideas or the extended synthesis in evolution are looking more to, for instance, DNA is not a blueprint and DNA is not the story. The big story is in how cells interact with one another.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole other discussion to be had there.
Oh yeah, there's a big fight going on between like Dennis Noble and a bunch of other about the intelligence of cells and all that. And I think the extended evolution guys are right. Dr. Dan's going to hate me, but they're right to be saying this. But then the way they say it is, oh, evolution, you know, Darwinian evolution is dead, or neo-Darwinian.
Yeah.
And now we're going to entirely new paradigm. No, fucking genes still produce proteins and they still do the things we know they do. And it's all very important. And DNA does have a lot to, well, like a whole lot to do with how you develop, but it's not a blueprint is what everybody has to understand. There isn't a little blueprint for your arms and legs. Parts of your brain use the same pathways to develop as parts of your face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is really interesting. So the shape of your face and the shape of your brain are somewhat done with the same genetics. So anyway, let's see. Where are we going here? Yeah, there's some good parts here. Okay, I think, yeah.
Okay, and how did that happen?
Well, I just explain how it's a mutation.
Well, no, a mutation is a category of what's happening. I'm asking, how does a mutation produce the possibility of an organism producing something completely new?
Well, it would change the proteins that the genes produce and how they're expressed. And that would affect the phenotype of the organism.
Okay, so you're saying
I think maybe one. Sorry, Danikin.
Okay.
I think one thing I could have done better here is maybe use fewer jargon terms here. That might have helped the discussion flow, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it would have helped at all.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, I think he just would have jumped on you more and used it against you and tried to make you look like you were, like you didn't know what you were talking about. So I don't.
So maybe I should I like I guess I'm thinking, should I have dumbed it down even more for him, or?
Yeah, in a way, he should have seized on this thing. His missing, like, I don't think he has a clue what a mutation actually is.
Yeah,
and what it would mean for a mutation to be neutral. I think he thinks that a mutation is like if you suddenly developed an arm out of the middle of your forehead.
Right.
A mutant, right? So he's thinking mutant because at some point later he starts to ask, well, when does a mutation become beneficial? You know, or when does a deleterious mutation turn into a beneficial mutation? And like just weird questions like that indicated that he didn't have he doesn't know, I don't think, even the basics of DNA and what's happening and how the nucleotides are changing and what downstream effect that has. And that's something that I think they cover in 8th grade biology now. But maybe not.
Like what Nitty says here, beneficial according to what exactly?
Right. Yeah.
The context matters.
Yeah, we were talking a bit before, and I wanted to make a point that going from deleterious to neutral to beneficial, there's a gradient, and it depends entirely on, or it depends on the environment as much as what's happening inside the organism. So the outside of the organism, the inside of the organism are just as important, basically, as to whether or not that is going to be what that mutation is going to do in terms of reproductive success. Most of the time, I think most of the time they're neutral. I think most mutations are neutral.
Oh yeah.
And
or what Nitty says here, I really like this analogy here. Like one day you could have a mutation that gives you a larger brain or more processing power, basically.
Yep.
But then you have less muscle to get away from a predator. So it's like, yeah, there are always trade-offs involved too. It's like you can't have infinite energy for growing different body structures. Like that's just not possible.
Yeah. And then a lot of mutations are down to luck. I mean, there's like sometimes you could have an amazing mutation that would really increase reproductive success, but a tree falls on the organism, right? And
right, yeah.
Right? So I mean, it's just
a bottleneck there.
Right. Yeah, a little bottleneck. Well, there would be a bottleneck. Nitty says, "Whoops, I'm not sure." Anyway, okay. Let's see where he goes. Okay, I had another part highlighted in red here. Maybe
okay, and the change would be producing something called a gamete, but for no reason, right?
No reason.
Okay.
So it would just be a random occurrence at this point.
Okay, so you get a random mutation that produces that basically informs the organism to produce something and use energy that it doesn't benefit from at the moment, right? Okay,
so here's another part of their inability to understand the process, basically. So you get a random mutation that produces that basically informs the organism. Okay, what that kind of talking, is confusing, right?
Wait, he said it informs the organism?
Yeah, informs the organism.
That's a very odd way to put it.
Yeah, there's a transcript. Informs the organism to produce something and use energy that it doesn't benefit from at the moment.
Yeah, see, he's thinking about it as a blueprint or as a literal code kind of.
Yeah, like something produced a nub, right? That wasn't used, and it took a lot of energy to produce the nub. Where what really is happening is like one mutation may not have any effect at all on the energy, or it may have the slightest effect on energy that you wouldn't notice it, and we don't care. I mean, there's a lot of proteins being made in your cells that really aren't used at all. They just end up being consumed. There's a lot of RNA that's transcribed that ends up going nowhere and doing nothing.
Yeah,
it just ends up.
Despite what Standing for Truth wants us to think, there is a lot of spurious transcription in our body.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons for that is when we cross over to eukaryotes and we had mitochondria gave us a real excess of energy. I mean, it went from 4 ATPs to like 32 per sugar molecule or something.
Right. Yeah, we had a surplus of energy to not to use on other things that in an ought case, like we're going to consciously start using it to start grouping cells together and become multicellular or things like it. Just that was a precondition that allowed for subsequent changes that may or may not have been possible if the mitochondria didn't exist beforehand.
What do we got here? Someone the other day told me a Greek term for a good faith interlocutor. I sure wish I could remember it. Yeah, me too. Nub theory. Okay, yeah, Johnny. Nub theory is he's thinking with his nub. Oh, Otangelo misses the Benny Hill theme. We should play it for him again sometime. Anyway, at one time, Otangelo, you were pretty offended by that.
Yeah, that's an interesting turn there.
Anyway, okay. Let's see, where are we here? I think we're right at the end of that. I'm not sure. Let me see. When does the organism quote know to keep doing this production? Should we go through the interim here?
I guess we can. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if we'll cover the whole conversation, but it was kind of long.
We definitely want to get to the red parts.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll skip down a little bit, down to 51:22. I might skip ahead.
Oh, sure.
Toward producing something that gives them no benefit. What's the time frame on that?
Well, there isn't really a time frame because in like a changing environment, for example, where the physical conditions are constantly going back and forth, like what we see in today's environment with modern animals, having a lot of variation present there. This is what I was mentioning before. Having a lot of variation present there allows certain individuals to survive those changes.
I got you. Okay. I understand the story. It's just not an explanation. I'm asking you if how you're categorizing evolution, right? And I ask, well, how do you produce sexual selection and you know, go from asexual to sexual? And you're saying, well, we got to start with these stages. But by your own account, wouldn't you have you have to determine at some point where a useless activity of producing something that is useless to you for how long? I'm asking you, well, if the process of becoming sexual is an advantage, I'm asking you, when does the organism, quote, know to keep doing this production? Are you saying it's totally random, and then there's an arbitrary point in time where it's suddenly they hit the jackpot and now it's beneficial, right? Is it beneficial?
Okay, so you want to comment on that? So hit the jackpot. So I guess it is in a way kind of a jackpot when you're in an environment and something becomes a real advantage, right? So you could call that a jackpot. I don't know. But you suddenly hit so you're saying it's totally random. Okay, so there's the random part of evolution, or the stochastic part. And then at some point, some of these things become beneficial in the environment you're in for part of the population, and they may reproduce at a rate of 1.01 times greater than the rest of the population. And then if they're in stasis for a long time, over time, that may end up being that may end up sweeping the population, right? So, I mean,
right. And I think this, there's a concept in population genetics called standing variation, where basically this genetic variation is drifting in the population for some time. Like it's just there.
Right.
There's no it's sometimes a misconception in evolutionary theory that you need to wait for a certain mutation, and then once that mutation appears, then things start evolving. That's not always the case. Like there's often within a very large population of organisms, there's variation for any number of traits in terms of their size or their complexity or what have you. And then once, like I said, once the environment changes, then things that were once neutral or even deleterious at one point and were just kind of at low frequency in the population are now picked up, so to speak, by selection and reach fixation fairly quickly. And then you can have subsequent occurrences like that afterwards that kind of refine the organ, so to speak.
Yeah.
And make it even more complex. So it's a complicated process, but yeah, it all depends on variation existing beforehand and then environmental changes afterwards. Because if you're not prepared for those, or well prepared, if you're what language to use here, if you're not adapted or able to adapt to the new subsequent environment that's around you, then obviously you're going to go extinct over time. So you kind of have to have like this is a fundamental concept in environmental conservation. Even you have to have some amount of genetic variation already in the population for it to be able to survive these kinds of changes and still make it through. So
yeah, you could visualize well, for instance, you and I have 3 million mutations between us. I would have 3 million mutations if we called you normal. So I have 3 million differences in my DNA than you have. Any two humans are likely to have about 3 million nucleotides that differ, and we're a very large population.
Yeah.
And then if you look at it like, okay, if there's something hanging around out there that some beneficial biochemical pathway that popped up, if we look at the entire population, it may be at this point randomly fixed, where we would have these sparse points all through the population, all over the place. I guess I like thinking about bugs on a hillside. And throughout that, okay, there's this one mutation that, or set of mutations that are riding along and random. And if we were to draw a graph, there would be sparse points that had that mutation. But then if part of the environment changed, if there was a washout or something, and then the beetles got separated and part of them were in a different environment, that mutation would end up becoming important because now they were in a lower part of the swamp, right?
Right. Yeah, this is kind of where the concept, the metaphor of the adaptive landscape, I think becomes really useful.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden there's a peak for that particular set of mutations that was just randomly interspersed by chance because it rode along with other mutations that were. It's really what is the theory where they go back in generation after generation, and I forgot the name of it. Oh my God, I've been too long away from molecular biology or genetics. Anyway, there's the math is really surprising, kind of, when you look at it, right? Because like this packet of mutations, this particular new beneficial mutation probably came, if you look all the way back, from one individual, that had that mutation, right? And it ended up just getting mixed in the population to the point where 1 out of 10 people had it, or 1 out of 10 beetles had it. And then suddenly you get a washout, and those 1 out of 10 beetles are the only ones that survive. Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got, something beneficial. But anyway.
Right. Yeah. The on the other hand, though, a bottleneck like that could randomly eliminate those beneficial variants. So it's kind of half 50-50 chance there. Or it's random chance by definition.
Yeah, or if it hadn't dispersed across the entire population, and the washout killed all the beetles, and that was the only place where the mutations were, is the part that washed out, then that mutation is done for. So
right.
But basically having 3 million differences between us across our entire population, you can imagine how many different. I forget how many variations they found in genes. There's a number for it, but across the human population, we have a hell of a lot of variation right now.
Right. And not as much as some other species, and that's another point. Humans are very genetically conserved because we've had a very small population size for most of our history, so we went through a major bottleneck.
And humans are the worst possible example of how to explain evolution.
Yeah.
Because right now our natural selection is way, way different than it was.
Right.
500 or 10,000.
We're still under some selective pressures. It's just not exactly the same as we would call it for species in the wild.
Yeah. Let's say, having participated in many live streams of discords with Orthodox people, I'm having difficulty in separating the wheat from the chaff. What is tongue in cheek and what is serious? Yeah, I've made some inroads here. Oh my God. Okay, JimBob's here. So, my racist Italian stuff, for one, I'm Sicilian. 2, racist.
Yeah, they're talking about racism and sexism in the chat, apparently.
Yeah, because JimBob really doesn't care when he uses his, and he can chalk it up to being a comedian or whatever and standing up, but he is very insulting to a lot of different people, and apparently even to Sicilians when he's Italian. So I don't know.
There isn't anything more racist. Yeah, sure.
JimBob.
Let's carry on that little nugget there.
And then we got Scott Duke.
Yeah.
Let's see. It isn't good or bad for a species, or happens or doesn't happen. Yep. And the other thing that's really important, and this I know about in humans, is that when there are mutations, I think up to 50% of those mutations never even birth a pregnancy.
Right. That's like the extreme case of purifying selection there.
Right. Yeah. The selection that happens when shit goes bad, everything just dies and never even has an effect or gets out of the box.
Right.
Never gets out of the egg.
And most mutations after that point don't reach fixation anyway, but the ones that do happen to have a beneficial advantage for the survival of the organism. So it's always interesting to explain both the maybe not random, more like stochastic and non-stochastic influences on the evolutionary history of an organism to creationists. They don't get it sometimes.
Yeah, we're going to talk about racism.
Oh, yeah, we said his name 3 times.
Yeah, I know. At some point, Jim Bob, we're going to talk about racism and why you're a racist. I've got something on that. Basically, you don't think you are, but you sure as hell are. You've got, if it quacks like a duck, fucking duck. Anyway.
At what point, right? I'm asking you, if I granted this mutation and said, and you went, okay, well, now it's producing this new thing called gametes, but to what end? We don't know. It doesn't know. It doesn't have forward knowledge, right? It's just doing it. Right?
Okay. So what he fails to understand is that there are often some advantages to these small changes, right? So
From the get-go.
Yeah. So, if there was a process that started to produce, how the hell would that work? Well, we're going way back, okay, to gametes, the production of gametes, and the dimorphism, or the difference in gametes, basically there's a whole lot of opportunity there for there to be benefit to having these things before they become very, very dimorphic, and they would become more dimorphic over time.
I think also looking at it from a population genetics perspective, like if they weren't beneficial immediately, then they wouldn't have spread through the population and become part of the norm of that species, so to speak. So we wouldn't even recognize them if they weren't somewhat beneficial traits.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they would have just stuck around drifting at low frequency in the population.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time.
Yeah, need to have forward knowledge.
No, that's the point.
Survival and reproduction.
Well, why survival is good for? Why is that imperative for an organism?
Okay, that is a really dumb question.
It kind of is. Like if it's okay, it's pretty simple. If you don't survive, then you're dead. you don't pass on your genes.
It's kind of the definition of don't survive, right?
Right.
Okay.
Like that, there's nothing more imperative than that.
Yeah, and here he's trying to bring his presuppositional bullshit in with, his basically, how do you get an ought from an is, right? That sort of shit. He's trying to bring in philosophy a little bit here, and you can see why he's not ready to think about science, because you can't think about science if you're doing presuppositional apologetics, Jim Bob. You got to get on. I mean, you got to pick a lane. If you're going to think scientifically, you got to think scientifically all the way down. Anyway, so let's see what else we got here. Okay, because that's one of the following defining. Okay, so we go down to let's see. Well, we can keep going here a little bit,
because that's one of the defining qualities of life. There are genes.
Well, no, but sometimes dying on purpose passes on your genes. So it wouldn't be survival.
Altruism. That would be inclusive fitness. Yes.
Well, then if passing on a gene, that means there's an assumed knowledge of your death and what happens after your death. For instance, if a bacteria seeks its own demise, but by seeking its own demise, it goes into a bird, right? And or whatever. And the way that process happens, there are certain organisms and bacteria that seek their own demise, but you're
like
saying
what?
Well, ultimately it's beneficial. I'm saying the organism seeking its own demise doesn't know the future. So how would it know it's beneficial in the act?
Okay, Danny. So this is again thinking in the way that Darwin thought about it. You have a bacterium that has a mutation, let's say, in its behavior or in its biochemistry that allows it. I don't know if it would even be a bacteria in that case, but whatever. That allows it to be eaten by a bird. Okay, this is actually the case for a lot of parasitic lifestyles. They get eaten by other things, and that helps carry on the rest of the life cycle. They get eaten by this other. They happen to get eaten by this other organism. That confers an advantage because then they get to spread and produce more offspring from there. So that behavior, the mutation that causes that behavioral change, therefore spreads for the rest of the bacteria. So more bacteria in the next generation have that behavior. So it's hard not to follow the logic here.
Yeah, he's kind of confused. This kind of and I hate Dawkins. I have so many problems with Dawkins, but basically the selfish gene. I mean, if the organism dies in order to put its genes into the future, right, then that's going to be a reproductive advantage for that gene,
right?
Not the organism. That organism is only going to have, well, it could have many offspring, basically, but its death basically is part of its sexual reproduction, and there are some crazy organisms like that, right?
Right. You kind of have to think about it from the perspective of the genes. How do the genes themselves get passed on and spread from there?
Yeah.
Instead of looking at it from the individual.
Let's see. Scott called Jim Bob a turnip that thinks magic zoo boats are real.
Yeah, they're fighting with him in the side chat.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. They're fighting with him about racism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Knock it off about the racism, guys, and think about the topic. We'll get to the racism later.
Another time. Yeah.
I've got I went on his stream and I made the statement that morality is related or has a lot to do with our sense of smell. And I have a wonderful video about that I can show at some later time. But anyway, they lost their shit in chat, because, what the hell did JimBob's say? That, morality, like it would have to have a certain smell, if somebody did something. And it was just like, what are you talking about? Anyway, it was that and racism we'll talk about at some point. Okay. So I think we're at the red.
How do you have access?
Oh, okay. I think I see your misunderstanding here. So basically, you have a genetic sequence that translates into a trait. So that trait is tied to that genetic sequence. The genetic sequence is passed on whether or not the individual dies after passing on that genetic sequence. So the trait that is produced by that sequence is also passed on. So the offspring that organism has will also have that trait. So that trait continues propagating despite the fact that the original organism died. So it doesn't matter if the original organism knew if it was going to die or not. The trait still. Yeah,
but I'm asking why is it beneficial to pass on a trait that's at the moment useless?
Okay, now he's going back and talking about neutral mutations. They get passed on by chance.
Right. And we're just granting him again the premise that at the moment it's useless. right? Not all situations are like that with mutations.
Okay, and then we got another red high.
It's not at the moment useless. No, that's why I was saying.
How is it not useless?
Because it helps it survive.
Wait, no, hold on. If there's a trait that's useless, let's say a nub starts growing. The animal has no use for it. It's using energy. It requires calories or whatever that is at this moment in time. Basically, it doesn't do anything. This function hasn't been created yet. For instance, if we go back to the gametes, the very production of the gametes you admitted said that had no real function or advantage at that first moment of time. Okay, so what's the advantage of producing something that doesn't give you any benefit directly at the moment?
Like, he's just assuming from the get-go that it doesn't give you any benefit immediately. Like, that's the premise in his argument. Is like, no, I disagree with your premise. Some traits, when they're in the individual they're produced in, give them an advantage in that particular environment.
Yeah. So I Googled evolution of penises and I was horrified.
There's a lot of diversity out there in genital organs.
Yeah. Some of them are just, some of them have hooks and clasps on them, and some of them, and then there's, the development of a nub, for one thing, may never have happened. I mean, there is a possibility that because of the way embryology works, that there was a patch, that emitted sperm, and then very, very suddenly, with just one mutation in the regulatory area of a gene, could have produced a long stalk where basically that sperm came out.
Right.
So there didn't have to be a nub penis that we carried around for millions of years, as he thinks, and then it ended up being beneficial at some
before
point.
We started using it to reproduce. Yeah.
There
are organisms that reproduce sexually without any external genitalia to speak of. So.
Yep, and I think it was hard for him to understand that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe Jock. Why would an organism pass on a trait? Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Do you want to listen to it, or?
I guess we can.
Yeah, I guess we can go forward here.
That's why it produces genetic variation by combining the genetic material.
No, that's explaining what's happening. I'm asking, why is that beneficial to the current organism that experienced this new mutation?
Because it's not it doesn't need to be beneficial to the organism immediately. It's beneficial to the survival of that specific trait, because it helps that trait get passed on.
Okay, I'm going to switch over here to video. Just want to watch.
There we go. Because
watch his expression in his face.
It's not it doesn't need to be beneficial to the organism immediately. It's beneficial to the survival of that specific trait, because if it helps that trait get passed on, then that trait is going to continue.
Great. So
does he look like somebody that really wants to understand what you're saying?
I don't think so. No.
Nope, he's trying to find a gotcha. And
right, he's looking for he's keeping his ears open for buzzwords, basically.
And you're trying to, at this point, I think you were genuinely confused at how ignorant he was about this.
At least about biology.
And at some point, you had to be asking yourself, why in the hell did I do this? Why am I here?
Right.
Why did I do this to myself? Because it just goes on and on. Let's see. I don't know. Let's see. So now
I wonder if he's even still in chat. I bet he's starting a stream to react to this one.
Yeah, probably. He's going to have a time with it.
So a useless trait could logically be passed on, right?
Yes, if it's hitchhiking along with a useful trait.
So non-beneficial traits can pass on. I'm asking, why does an organism pass on a non-beneficial trait and not just lose it?
Okay, sorry, repeat that one more.
Why would an organism pass on a trait that's not beneficial?
Okay. So there's some common man in this misunderstanding here that, okay, I don't know. It seems like they're thinking about populations that are like 3 or 4 organisms big, right? I mean, you've got a population of 10,000 beetles, and there are non-beneficial mutations in that group, right? And the non-beneficial mutation, like one mutation, may end up being a part of a whole cassette of mutations, right? That have some effect down the line. And because, I mean, there's no disadvantage to carrying this neutral mutation around. And that population could end up fixing, or not fixing, but at least spreading that neutral mutation.
Right. And like we said, it's a spectrum of gradual change here. So like each mutation that gets added, so to speak, or each individual change to the nucleotides results in a phenotypic change that makes that organ better at what it does, maybe ever so slightly, but like that still confers a reproductive advantage.
Yeah, and the other thing that he was kind of asking about is why would it stick around at all if it had no reproductive advantage? And that would be the carrying of neutral mutations.
Right. That would just be drift at that point.
Right. Between you and I, there are 3 million, differences, but we have a lot of, we probably share some mutations that the rest of the population only has sparsely.
Right.
And if we were beetles living in the woods and fighting for our food, those mutations that you and I have may end up becoming a very slight advantage at some point. And hence we're going to produce more offspring and
with those mutations, like they inherit them because that's the reason why it's not tautological. What we're saying here is that it's based on the traits themselves. Like no one's just saying the ones that survive happen to survive. Like, yeah.
I would like to develop a model for some of this at some point that really worked well, that worked with embryology. And I think it would make a hell of a video game if you had like some kind of organisms that were developing, and they wouldn't have to be like biological organisms. They could be like, like
it would take a lot of programming though.
I know, but I think it would be a great game, and a lot of yeah. Anyway,
or at least a good simulation.
Yeah. So he goes on for a point about that, and then let's see. I'm going to go down to 5727 because, well, let's say that isn't that far away.
It is conceded
to survive.
I'm asking
so it helps it produce more offspring with that trait.
All right. So you're saying there's an organism that produces a mutation that produces X trait that it has no use for, but it passes down that trait ultimately because later down the line it'll eventually become very useful to passing down traits?
No, it is useful to the organism because it helps it produce more offspring. That's what.
How does a useless trait help produce more offspring?
Just assuming his premise to be.
Let's say I have a useless trait of a certain.
What's that?
I said he's just assuming what he's saying is true to begin with.
Yeah.
When that's the thing in question.
Yeah, and he's kind of like mixing things up here.
Yeah.
How does a useless trait? Okay, a useless trait would be a neutral trait, right? Help produce more offspring. It doesn't.
Right. That's what neutral means compared to all the other traits in the like we're talking about relative fitness here. So relative to all the other traits, like compared to a beneficial trait, it doesn't help produce more offspring. Like beneficial, like that's what beneficial and neutral mean.
But it doesn't produce less offspring either if it's neutral.
Right. It doesn't drive the population to extinction. So.
And he seems to think that like this nub has to be around for a very long time as a nub and not do anything.
Right, which is no.
He gets into shortly he's going to get into that.
Certain mole right? That's just a weird mole on a weird part of my body or whatever, on my face or something like this. Covers my whole eye. Now, let's say it just so happens that just keeps passing on down to my children, right? Now, can you please tell me how?
This is a very specific example. I wonder if...
Right. Are moles even inherited?
No.
I don't think they are.
No. But
such an example would be beneficial to sexual selection or keeping your genes alive?
Well, a mole specifically wouldn't.
Okay, so where's this delineation between a trait that's also as useless, like a nub, that might become a penis in a million years?
It is. There it is right there. He's imagining that that's how evolution works, that there's a nub and it sticks around for 1 million years. And like it could, I mean, if that nub happened to ride some other set of genes into the whole population,
right?
Like you would have a useless nub, but no, the nub did not become a penis and then suddenly start shooting sperm. The sperm was shooting before the nub.
Right. It just became a way of doing that more efficiently, but you were already producing sperm to begin with.
And he seems to have a hell of a problem with that. But this is rich here. This keeps going on.
Let's say a blob. Let's say we skip past the hermaphrodite, and then there's just like almost a pre-human form, right? But they don't have their penis.
We're not even mammals.
A penis and a vagina needed to actually form over time.
Okay, a pre-human form. So it's almost like he's imagining humans that didn't have a penis and a vagina.
Right. Like, dude, we're not even at vertebrates at this or mammals at this point. Like I said, it just lacks. He lacks understanding or comprehension of the depth of animal diversity out there. How vast the tree of life is.
Yeah, and in general, I'm finding that a lot of these people, most of the people in his chat, they are not capable of even entertaining a scientific thought. They could never do science because they can't imagine anything outside of what they already believe. So there's and I'm beginning to think that there's almost it's not binary, but it's almost like two kinds of people. There are people that want the woo-woo.
At least two extremes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that just want the spiritual woo-woo stuff. And they're not going to think in terms of like mechanics. And it's really weird.
Yeah.
But then there are engineers that think mechanically too much.
Right.
That's the point of biology too. So, I mean, it's just the wrong kind of thinking. Scientific thinking has to be really open-minded, just right across the board. I mean, even we have to be open to the idea that there's going to be some miraculous spiritual influence out there that we discover. Yeah. Because if that's the case and we start to see evidence for it, we cannot shut it down.
All right, show me an example of an organism that had one of its features created from the get-go and no evidence of any genetic basis, and I'll have to change my mind at that point.
Or a frog that gives birth to a cow.
Right. A little mini cow.
Yeah, a little mini cow, but it grows really big, and then it passes on that trait to its offspring, so they all grow big after it grows big.
Right. It's always the ironic truth that we keep saying, that like whatever creationists say would prove evolution would actually disprove it, would actually be better for them.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the story of the Ediacaran? And basically this schoolgirl found a fossil, and she went back and reported it, and they said, bullshit, you didn't really, it was just a pattern in the rock, we're going to dismiss it.
Oh yeah, because we didn't know how to recognize those kinds of fossils at that point.
Yeah, a few years later, 3 boys went and discovered the same fossil, and they went back, and they just dismissed them. But then one of them, his father, he believed everything his kid told him, right? So he was really open to what his son told him. He didn't believe his kid was going to lie about it. So he went and talked to a geologist, and the geologist got interested because this was 600 million year old rock, and there weren't supposed to be fossils there. And so he went back, and then that geologist tried to write a paper, and they rejected the paper. Nature did, because of course fossils can't be there. We're just going to reject it. Now, that's an example of what not being open-minded to anything gets you.
Yeah, which sometimes happens. Yeah, I mean, scientists have their prejudices too. That's why the whole system exists to kind of weed that out most of the time.
And that's why I encourage, basically letting your mind wander as much as you possibly can. And of course, you got to slap it now and then and say, behave.
Right. It's like it has to be a healthy amount of skepticism. And like we as atheists or evolutionists have to be open-minded as well. That's what I keep saying too.
Yeah. Pride Heart. Okay. Pride Heart Rainbow Philly is like garlic to JimBob the vampire, or to the JimBob vampire. So anyway, that just kills him. Okay. Let's see. And then I start going. I'm going to switch over to transcript view here. Hang on a second. Let's see. Little window. There we go.
Yeah, we should actually start calling him Jim Nub.
Call him what?
Call Stephanie Jim Nub.
Yeah, I call him JimBob, Jim Dumb. I've got a lot of names for him.
I like Jim Nub. I hope you don't mind, Stephanie. I'm going to steal that. So if I see him, I'm going to call him that.
Yeah, I never thought of Jim Nub. That is perfect. We should call him Jim Nub from now on, because he really is into the nub theory of penis development.
Yeah. People of the side chat, make it so.
Yeah. So we gotta, let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Come on, StreamYard, catch up.
To its completion?
It gets better.
No, because there are fully formed organisms that don't have a penis or a vagina and still reproduce just fine.
I'm saying there are organisms with penises and vaginas, correct?
Yes, but not all of them.
I'm saying those organisms, did they have a previous form in their lineage that didn't have a penis or a vagina?
Yes.
Okay, that's all you need to understand. So let's go back to the form of let's say a human. Let's say a pre-form of a human, all the way back in your narrative to where this organism doesn't have a penis or a vagina. And so
okay, that's actually in his head. He actually thinks there had to be, according to evolution, a pre-form human.
Whatever that means.
Or is he taking great license with the idea with saying that it's a pre-form human?
Right.
And he really means that it's a pre-vertebrate, right?
Right. Yeah. I don't think he's thinking that far ahead, to be honest.
I don't know. It's just, but he really is hung up on
what I'm asking you is, they have a mutation, according to your view, that for the male produces a nub that you're saying eventually over time, even though it doesn't know it yet, it's advantageous because it's heading toward sexuality, that there's going to be two sexes with fully formed genitals.
Okay, so he's got it all backwards.
Right. Sex came before.
Yeah.
Before genital organs. Like what Hoopy Fruit says, our mammalian lineage have had these structures for a long time, like because we already reproduced sexually before we developed them.
Yep.
Like again, not all mammal penises or other external genitalia in mammals aren't the same as in reptiles. For example, like lizards, they have different structures that superficially look the same, but aren't the same.
Yeah. Oh, and they try to determine causation, which is a leap in the first place. So prescriptionists and are locked in that mindset. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
They're just not thinking how you need to think if you're going to study evolution. It just
they're not capable of thinking in a different way than that.
I think they're capable, but it's willful ignorance.
Yeah, they don't want to think that way.
They don't want to think that way. Well, it would cost them some of their other views,
right?
Which, it's a great cost for them. It probably scares the shit out of them.
It's like what Aaron Ross says. Like, if you try to understand something, then you might accept that thing. So, they don't want to accept it.
Right.
They want to cling to what they already believe.
Yeah, if they got close to understanding it, their little nub might shrink up and go the other way. It'll shrink their nub. Anyway.
That actually work together, but randomly this happened. Randomly, the male and female split apart, but also are compatible in sex, because the early stages, according to your narrative, there was a nub that eventually became a penis, and then maybe there was a nub.
Is that your narrative, Andrew, or is that his?
No, that's his. Like, who's to say like the nub wasn't already like? How are we defining penis here? Even exactly. There's so much variation that you could just say, oh, this little worm, like flatworms, for example, they have little kind of penises that they use to fence with each other. Is that a penis? It's like pretty much just the nub he's describing here. It's not anything like a mammalian form of a penis. So
yeah, I think that like early organisms used to basically spit sperm on the other organism.
Yeah, I mean a lot of organisms still fertilize externally. They don't even need genitalia.
Frogs, right?
Yeah.
Frogs. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't know much about frogs. Anyway.
That eventually became a vagina. And over time, as these things were passed on, right?
He's saying a nub also became a vagina?
Right? Mutation.
Does he know what a vagina is?
Okay, there was a nub that eventually became a vagina. He actually says that. Okay, there was a nub that eventually became a vagina. Right there.
Interesting phrasing there.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. And over time, these things were passed on. Yeah. Well, there's an interesting tie-in with some of the current politics.
Yeah. I guess so.
Maybe that's got him thinking this way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sexual selection, by the way, because we don't have sex yet, right? So asexual.
No, we do have sex already.
Wait, hold on. From your view, humans at some point had to be asexual, right?
Wow. He says it out loud. I forgot.
Oh.
Humans at some point had to be asexual.
No.
Like, how far off? And this was when I listened to this, I was like, oh my God, this, I thought he was
like, unless he really wants, again, like you said, to stretch the term pre-human here.
Yeah, he's gonna call the basically the single-celled ancestor
a pre-human.
Or a pre-human. I don't know. Maybe that's. I guess we were charitable. We'd give him that, right? I don't know. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Scott. They're like articles on this. You can go out and read them if you're genuinely interested in this topic. And of course, we know that he isn't.
Right. Yeah, because he doesn't want to believe it.
Right.
At the get-go. Okay. Okay, got it. So, okay. So you try to bring them back.
Yes. When they were single cells.
Okay, got it. So we're back to single cells. I'm asking you.
And he laughs about that. That's funny. So, what the fuck? So I think he did mean human. So now I'm going to be a little.
The moment, whatever stage in the development from single cell to human being, there has to be a moment necessarily, right, where a penis began to form on the individual level.
No.
Right?
When we were multicellular and when we were past, like on land or something.
Okay. Yeah, wherever you want to put us. I'm saying there is a little thing called the beginning of a penis, right?
Yes, but you're skipping over a few stages here that are important.
I granted you the stages. Let's just say whatever you explained to be the beginning of a penis and a vagina, I granted the whole stage.
Okay.
Okay. So now the process is these organisms who aren't having sex yet.
They are
already. How are they having sex?
You can't imagine that they could be exchanging genetic information without a penis and a vagina. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And wouldn't somebody in like 7th, 8th grade science have learned some of this? I don't know.
I guess not.
Guess
not. I mean, anyone who's ever heard of, like, I don't know if I bring this up in this conversation, or like I know someone else has, to him, like, has he ever heard of the cloacal kiss in lots of bird species?
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know. Maybe he went to school in like Kentucky or something where they were afraid to say sex in any of the classes.
I don't know.
Well, I think they got laws against it now in Florida, right?
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. Well, there are laws in Florida that can be extended to eliminate a whole lot of teaching. There's a lot of things that the teachers could be charged for if they said them, according to some of the bullshit they pass there. We're going backwards. We've been going backwards since Obama. And I'm hoping we're going to start going forward here again in November. I don't know. We'll see.
JimBob, like, on what do you think genitalia are for?
Yeah.
Besides the exchange of genetic information, like for exchanging gametes, that's what they're for.
Oh, here
that's what they do.
Okay, you're not talking about the exchange of genetic info. We're talking about the development of genitalia. Yes. Okay, so
like even here, like the genitalia. What's the genitalia? There are lots of different kinds of genitalia out there.
Let's see. Okay, chat is kind of moving fast. So guitarist, the analogy he makes is standing beside a high cliff that seems to be impossible to scale. He then says there is a long, gentle slope on the other side of the cliff. It becomes trivial. Anyway.
I mean, should we let him on and have him try to defend what he's saying here? Or
I don't know. What do you think? Well, last time I had him on, he really said some horrible, disgusting things to people. And I'm a little bit, and I promised I wouldn't do it again.
Okay.
People.
Yeah, your channel.
Yeah, I think from now, I mean, I will go on his channel, but I don't want to hear his bullshit on my channel anymore like he did the last time he was on.
Sure. Yeah.
He kind of wore out his welcome, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, B.S. Lewis got blocked, I think, on JimBob. Let's see here. Yeah. God damn. I cannot catch the chat. It's going kind of fast. Well, we got only 19.
I mean, if we're talking about like the development, like it's like we were talking about earlier, it's just extending tissues that already exist in the body. It's like, it's not that complicated.
Okay, JimBob. So sexual reproduction basically started long before penises and vaginas. So that's what you're kind of missing. And there ended up being a lot of diverse ways to, I guess when we ended up with sexual dimorphism, gamete dimorphism started before sexual dimorphism, before there were two sexes, right?
Yeah.
We got that. And then you got another stage where there's, where one produces just one kind of, we ended up with the ovum and the sperm paradigm, which ended up, and then long after that, probably how many million years, 100 million years after that, we ended up with penises and vaginas. And if you go out and Google the evolution of the penis, you will see how diverse the penis is, and go look at the images. But anyway,
I mean, like I said, there are organisms that can sexually reproduce just fine without it. But like, if you do have those structures, that gives you an advantage because you can more efficiently transport like obviously not having one still works well for these other organisms, but having one works even better for these other organisms, like the precursors to tetrapods or amniotes, because it helps them like more efficiently transport sperm from the male to the female.
Yeah, and penises and vaginas have other functions too.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so that's a problem, JimBob. That's what we're picking on here is your lack of understanding of all the stages, and it seems like you've smushed them all together, and you've come up with a crazy idea that there was a human primate that didn't have a penis and vagina, or maybe even didn't have two sexes. No, JimBob, no. Bad JimBob. Let's see here. Should we go further?
Let's see. Do you have any other timestamps you want to highlight?
Well, let's see. Okay.
Because I think before this we've covered most of the main point. Oh yeah, that's another good point, Stephanie. The bee, the wasp stinger are modified ovipositors. Yeah, that's a really good point there. You can have one structure modified to another for reproduction, or from just how evolution works.
I don't know what to highlight here.
The individuals or at the population level magically that all has the same mutation happen.
No,
the beginning of a
not how
nub.
it works. That's not how fixation works.
The beginning of a nub, that's not a penis, right? And I'm telling you, we're still in the asexual phase.
No.
Because,
I'm trying to keep describing to you.
Okay, so why would we need to grow a penis if we already have sexes?
That one. That was one of the highlights. Why would we need to grow a penis if we already have sexes? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see what else we got here. I'm asking you, that's the question. Okay, so I'm not sure if we have any. It's already sexual at this stage. So you guys kind of go back and forth on that for a while.
Yeah, kind of a bit of a circle for a little bit.
And then we go to 106. Let me see here. 105.
Oh yeah, and then we start talking about the bears and selection.
We definitely want to get to the bears. The bear.
The bear. Yes, once the gametes are different from one another.
Okay. And so the gamete production is at the moment useless, but towards some useful end that the organism's unaware of, but keeps passing the trait, and voila.
Okay, I see where you're going with it. Okay, so the difference between what you're saying and what I'm saying basically is you can have gametes, you can combine them, right? You that's sexual reproduction.
So you're just still trying to explain it to them.
Yeah, trying. That's sexual reproduction. So no sex is involved.
I understand. I'm not saying they have to have forward. I'm saying all of it is still random at this point. There's a mutation that's random.
It confers a reproductive advantage. So it's not
advantage.
Random.
Well, then how do you distinguish a random event in evolution from a not random one? What's the methodology?
Okay, there you go. What do you think of that question?
Well, it's a population genetics question.
Yeah.
It's like fundamentally gets into what's the difference between drift and selection.
But for a long time, he tries to he uses language like what else more of it, where he's trying to ask how you determine, or how do you distinguish a random event in evolution from a not random one? So he seems to think that a beneficial mutation would be not random. I don't know.
Right. Like all mutations when they start are random in a colloquial sense.
Yeah. Or stochastic.
Stochastic. Yeah.
Which just means random that we can't figure out. Kind of. Okay. So then at 109, I think I got another highlight. Let me see here. Jockey ahead. You getting tired? Tired of?
Maybe a little bit of what he's saying, but yeah, okay. we can keep going if you want.
Yeah, we got to get to the. We'll get to some of the.
I understand. Spots. I'm asking you the process from random, right? Randomness needs to give you the first stage of benefit, right?
No, it's randomly generated, and then it will have an advantage.
Got you. So there's randomly generated benefit, and then once it's beneficial, the same process that produced the randomness goes away.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's so. What the fuck? What is he thinking here? He's thinking
it's like he's putting these biological mechanisms in such vague, philosophical sounding language here that it just doesn't even make sense anymore.
Right. So he's saying that, okay, there's this mechanism that creates the randomness, and it's not it's basically a mistake, you know. But we don't want to call it a mistake. Basically, copy errors, right? And
yeah, it kind of, sort of, yeah.
And then for some reason he thinks when a mutation becomes beneficial, that copy error mechanism goes away, is what he's saying. But what he really means is, why would a beneficial mutation become fixed? I think.
Right. I think like he seems to think like you have a mutation and then it somehow becomes beneficial. Well, it's either beneficial or not in that particular environment. It just is or isn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't become like that doesn't even make sense. How does something become a mutation become beneficial? That's not what the biological definition of beneficial mutation means in this context.
Yeah, we're going to get the bears here.
Yeah.
And his intro to bears is just wonderful. This part here, putting a cow in a freezer.
Okay, let's step back here. So it's a random mutation generating this trait, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once that trait is in the organism, if it has an advantage, it will be passed on. So it helps the individual survive.
Okay, here you could have said it will be passed on.
Yeah, it's I kind of screwed up on my language here, it looks like.
Yeah.
Longer in that particular environment. Like going back to the classic.
I was trying to find different ways to explain it to him, the concept to him.
I know. It's like I've walked into a group of people at a party once in a while, and the whole time I'm there, it's like, get me the fuck out of here. I can't. I just.
Yeah.
And at that point, anything they say to you, just like it becomes very confusing. Anyway, but
certain color coats will survive better in certain environments, right?
That's an adaptation. You can put a cow in a freezer.
Same thing here. It confers a reproduction.
So you can put a cow in a freezer and then its coat turns white, or,
Right. He's confusing adaptation with, I don't know if I mentioned this too, acclimatization.
Yeah.
Like individual it isn't adapting in the evolutionary sense. It's temporarily changing its phenotype.
Yeah, there's a trait where cows will get thicker fur, and slightly. Cows are a really bad example because they don't get. It doesn't
really have fur as much. Yeah.
Dogs will get thicker fur, and whether or not it's because they get cold, or whether it's because of the shortening of the daily cycle, right? That triggers it. It doesn't matter because it's an advantage for them to grow thicker fur.
Right. It's still like even the ability to have that kind of plasticity itself is a genetically determined trait.
Right.
So it itself can be passed on.
I think he doubles down here.
Advantage.
So that means, but here's the problem with that analogy is that a bear, if you put a bear in a freezer, right? It's already, you're basically post hoc looking at it as an advantage, as opposed to, well, there's something in the organism that's telling it to respond to the cold already, right? And you're saying, no, that's there because it's not random, but it came from random.
Yeah. Okay, and we get into the whole bear thing and the polar bear thing.
Yeah.
Well, polar bears, apparently they're pretty young, like
Oh, yeah.
50,000 years. And they don't have white fur. They have translucent fur.
Yep.
And it just, and they have black skin, which absorbs a lot of heat.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of a neat adaptation. But now we're looking at, okay, over the last 100,000 years, we're looking at bear populations, I think, in North America. And we have ice sheets coming down and receding and coming down and receding. And bear populations were quite successful, basically in North America. There was a lot of bear.
Yeah.
So you had the brown bear, and then I was trying to figure out exactly. I was trying to find some information about what the genetics is behind the translucent fur of a polar bear. And I wasn't successful in finding any papers on it. And then of course, my attention span is that of a gnat. So I moved on to something else. But now if there were a bear that had, say, one mutation that caused it to have white fur, and the bear population is like fluctuating across this polar region.
Right.
And there were brown bears, I'm sure, that survived long into the glaciation phase, or the phase where a lot of snow was snowing more often than not.
Right. Kind of spread across the landscape.
Right. And they still survived. But if there was one mutation that caused that translucent fur, then that bear would have done very well in the winter and apparently produced a good number of offspring, so that mutation, if it just happened once, it could have happened multiple times.
Right.
Some mutations are just primed to happen.
Right. Yeah. They're relatively common or easy to, like fur color. Like that's kind of easier to change than like some other stuff.
And if it happened, say, twice in a huge population of brown bears at a time when they were either being forced north or the ice sheets were coming south, basically, climate was changing, those bear would have stuck with the area where they were less visible because they would have been far more successful. And that population would have increased. And that apparently happened very rapidly. So the fact that they're only 50,000 years old indicates that it maybe wasn't a whole lot of genetic changes in order for that to happen, in order for translucent fur to happen.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a bunch of mutations all at once at first. It would have been like a little bit at a time. Like it would have given, they would have become just a little bit better suited to that. And like, granted, they wouldn't have been as well adapted as modern polar bears, but like that's what adapting to the environment means to begin with. So
right, because modern polar bears have a whole lot of adaptations. And that would have developed out of the brown bear population over time. So,
right.
And the thing that he's not understanding is that there are two things here. There's a diversity of the gene pool. Then there are, mutations on that diversity that would shift it, so that there was perhaps a rare white bear or two or whatever. And then there is over time, there is this shifting of environments, and environments can shift either like overnight with a landslide or basically a beaver dam that blocks a river or something like that. Or, there's
just
a number of ways.
Rapid, geologically speaking, in general.
Right. And then there's, these slow changes that kind of happen over time. Like right now in my backyard, we're losing our oak trees. And we don't know why we're losing our oak trees, but we are. And it's happening. It's happened over the last 20 years. So I can see it happening, right? But it's gradual, and the oak trees are going to be around for some time. So our squirrel population is going to be fine. But if it continues and they disappear, then the squirrel population is either going to have to have some mutation that allows them to find another way to forage, or they're going to have to move, one or the other, or go extinct.
Right.
And all of these things happen at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Or in different populations or different species.
Yeah, it'd be cool if you developed a model that showed that and you sped it up so that you could see not only the shifting environments, but the shifting diversity of, species. And then like two species breaking off, say being separated by a sudden river basin being carved, and or even a chunk of bog floating off into, another side of the lake.
Well, I think we've done that to some extent with like placing lizard populations on separate little mini islands or rafts of vegetation or fruit flies in the lab, kind of. So kind of a miniature version of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and he just doesn't seem to get any of that. So let's see here. Go ahead to another highlight, 112. Do you go from random to benefit? Okay, yeah. So this was interesting to me.
Random.
I misspoke there.
Okay, so you still have to reconcile the two, though, because that's what's in question. Is before something can be called or deemed beneficial, right? There has to be, you're appealing to this random process that's like the lottery, that finally the numbers will hit and it'll become beneficial. I'm asking you, how do you go from random to beneficial?
He's just defining beneficial in a completely different way in this case. Yeah. He's not using the biological definition.
Yep. How do you go from random to beneficial?
Then is this moment you determine that something's beneficial if the very process that's producing and keeping this going is random?
Okay, that's the part that really confused me about his dialogue. When he kept saying the moment you determine that something's beneficial, right?
Right.
Why would you have to determine it? Has
right,
nothing.
Because we're not determining whether it's beneficial. It either is beneficial or it isn't. That's
right. And he keeps doing that over and over, and it's almost like, what is he thinking? I don't know what.
Again, because I think he's because what some people in the chat are saying, like he's thinking in a prescriptive way.
Right.
Like he's thinking we're
prescribing beneficial to these.
Right.
But why the hell would we be involved at all? We're just observers. See what I mean? Why is he doing it that way? It's almost like he's borrowing some kind of religious idea.
Yeah.
And thinking, that God did this and God did that. That God had to decide that a mutation is...
right, yeah, because he thinks that God is the underlying fabric of reality, pretty much.
Oh, this is good. Concave earthers think nubs become vaginas. Oh, I want to show you something else, just so you know who you're dealing with here in this JimBob group. This is what Alchemist said. Okay, I made the comment that I would pay to send JimBob to Las Vegas because he's trying to raise money for his trip. That I would pay to send him there if he promised never to come back. So, and then Alchemist said, I would send Answers in Atheism to the moon since they believe we landed there so hard. And now JimBob also said something about he doesn't believe that rovers were actually put on Mars. He thinks,
really?
Yeah, he's I don't know. I would have to ask him again to double down on that. But he said that he thinks that NASA is is basically a conduit for money to end up in the military. And it has nothing to do with...
as if we don't already fund the military enough.
Right, exactly. And yeah, that's the part that didn't make any sense to me. It's like the military's got a lot of money. Don't worry about
it. Like these are the people we're dealing with. Just believe one conspiracy and you believe others as well.
Right. Yep. And oh my God. And then we get into the whole thing with JimBob's complete non-understanding of what a mutation is, being random. Like he thinks that being random is like some property or something of a mutation.
Right.
It's just really odd. Oh, and then what are you even asking right now? This is the point where you're just like, what the hell are you even saying right now? I mean, I'm kind of imagining what it must have been like to be you.
It was an interesting conversation as it progressed more and more.
Yeah, I don't think you were ready for this shit.
Yeah, some parts of it I definitely was not ready for.
Yeah. Then let's see, down around 118. Let me see here, where he kind of gets. It's weird, and this is the reason why it's so hard to go on JimBob's channel, is because he does this sort of shit all the time. 117, 18. Okay, we'll kind of get with the conversation here.
Random.
Play for a minute.
Yes, selection acts on phenotypic traits, the observable characteristics.
And how do you know a
An
mutation
individual.
is random and not an expression of the genotype and not a phenotype itself?
What the fuck? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
He doesn't understand the distinction between genotype or phenotype either.
Something like that. I don't know. Oh my god! And then he said yes, stochastic, and then he mispronounced stochastic, which
Really?
It said he didn't know what it was. Yeah. At some point, I'm not sure where he does it, but he mispronounces it. I think he calls it stochastic.
Okay, say it. Mutation.
You're just stuttering, man. What the fuck? Okay.
Ladder, you can see it and you can predict, well, that's going to pass down. So you're saying it's no longer random.
Yes, selection acts on phenotypic traits, the observable characteristics.
And how do you know a
An
mutation
individual.
is random and not an expression of the genotype and not a phenotype itself?
Okay, say it. Mutation is a change in the genotype.
Is that random?
Produces a change in the phenotype. That selection then acts on.
Is the mutation random?
Yes, it's stochastic.
And how do you know the mutation is random and it's not also built in to the phenotype?
Like, does he think the organism wills itself to have mutations?
I don't know. How do you know the mutation is not random, and it's not also built into the phenotype? Oh, maybe he's talking about adaptation, that it was already there, like, genetic diversity.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, you see, it's really difficult. But then this part happens here, and this indicates why it's so hard to talk to these guys.
How do you know it's
Because
random?
it doesn't it occurs. It doesn't occur because of the phenotype. So you're saying, how do we know that the phenotype didn't cause mutation?
I'm just saying the genotype, right, is the genes, and then the phenotype is the expression, correct?
Yes, the genotype produces the phenotype.
Okay, is a mutation an expression of the phenotype?
No,
it's not. What is it an expression of?
Is a mutation an expression of the
you're
phenotype?
confusing
Okay. And then he does
yourself here. Mutation.
No, I asked you a question. No, I asked a question. Hold on. Don't gaslight me. I don't gaslight you.
Okay.
I asked you, is mutation an expression of the gene?
Okay, so what do you think of that then? Don't gaslight me. Shut up. Quit trying to explain it to me. And then he goes ahead and repeats the same dumb thing he said before.
Right. Yeah. He's kind of like a Darth Dawkins.
Yeah.
Some similarities there, like he from the clips I've seen.
Yeah. So JimBob, if you're listening to this is no way to learn about evolution, and this is no way to talk to us, because you're not even listening when we try to explain or answer your question. Like, you ask a cockeyed question that's so far out there that, first of all, we say, what, we start to stutter, and then we try very gently to explain to you what's going on. And then you say, no, don't gaslight me. And then you ask the same stupid question again. Don't do that. Don't do that to us.
It's not helpful in this conversation.
It's not fucking helpful. Okay, yeah, okay. So let's go a little further here. I love the way
it's a change in the gene.
Okay, and I said, what is a mutation an expression of?
Nothing.
What the fuck?
Mutation isn't an expression. It's not derived by anything.
No, it's just a change in the genotype. Point blank.
Okay, and what's a mutation that's not a change in the genotype? It just produces the same information, just doubles it. What's that?
What?
I like the way you delivered that. What? This is when you realize how deep you were in, maybe. I think you realized a while ago, but anyway.
It may have been a few moments when I realized that.
Yeah, I don't know. So how do you know something is a mistake? Okay, ask that a little later on here. How do you know something's a mistake? Because it didn't produce the same sequence. Okay, you try to tell them, the copy variation.
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on a second. That's describing a discrepancy. That's tautological. Survival of the fittest is, it's a law of fucking mathematics. So it is tautological. It's like A equals A.
Right.
The genes at work are going to survive. For God's sake, just get it through your head. Accept the tautologies. There's nothing wrong with tautologies. When you determine that X equals X, you've solved the problem.
Yeah, I'll admit, I wasn't very familiar with JimBob and his tactics when I originally had this combo.
Right, yeah.
So.
Yep. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And I went through this whole thing. You imagine how much pain I've been in? I went through and I highlighted all your comments in blue, and
so much annotation for so much pain.
I know. Oh, here we go. Here, where the hell is it? So here's the thing that kind of caught my attention. 125. Let's see. Where is that? 125, 50.
Let's just assume the past was longer, right?
No,
there would have been more mutations over time.
No, that doesn't follow at all. That's like saying, we don't see X happening today, but if we had enough time in the past, or a deep time, right, go into the past and imagine, it would make sense.
I'm not sure if I'm past it, or let's see, 150. 120. Oh, I'm at one.
And here he's just channeling.
It happened more in the past if we just had
that's not what I'm saying.
Time isn't causal. Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a certain fraction of mutations today are beneficial. The rest are neutral.
What fraction is that?
That is a small fraction.
What is it though? Why don't you say it?
It depends on the environment and the organism.
Okay,
it's not universal.
Let's take a net balance.
1%, whatever.
Okay. So what we see today, and this is how kind of science works, is that what we see today, we describe it, and that's describing today for every given animal that has mutations, and we go, about 1%, and the rest is non-beneficial, does nothing. And your argument, it sounds like, and I'm trying to steel man, I really am, is that doesn't it follow that if there's enough time and enough sets of numbers in the past and sets of possibilities stochastically, that
right there,
that
is that even a word?
I don't know. I wrote it out. I kind of like cartooned it here stochastically. So it was obvious that he wasn't familiar enough with that term. That it's possible the numbers could have went up to 8. What were you saying? 80? What the fuck? I don't know. It's just, oh my God. Anyway. So I guess that's, anybody wants this transcript from me, because I did a lot of work on it, I'd be glad. You talk about stickleback fish because he asked for an example, and
that was the example of a beneficial trade off the top of my head.
Yeah, and here's another.
There are better ones out there, I think, but.
So it's spread because it's okay. So it was effective before it became effective, and you said what? Again. I highlighted.
I was flabbergasted by what he said at a few points in this conversation.
And then wait a second, that seems a bit circular, and you was like, how? And yeah. Okay, and so when were there bears that were pre-white bears, then that hung out in the whiteness, and so because they're brown and not red, they made it, they survived with brown, but red is bad. Come on, dude, that's absurd. What the fuck?
Yeah. Like re-listening to some of this,
it's painful.
Very bizarre.
Yeah, okay, a red bear. Okay, what 132.51. We'll go there.
That it's possible that.
Okay, 132.51. We'll just. What we're trying to show here is that there's a unwillingness to understand, and they want to ask questions because they want to show their audience how incredulous, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to show that it's not, because they believe it and they just think they're taking the evolutionists and making them look dumb.
Yeah.
But to us who understand this process, you guys look like idiots.
They're just revealing their ignorance.
It's to the point where it's shocking.
Right.
It's just shocking.
It's like, this is why you need, like, some topics are more complicated than others. You need a background in it to really discuss it and understand it.
Right.
It's like, if you don't try to get that background, then no, you're not going to understand it as well as you like.
Yeah.
Dad, even though animals can go extinct and have all their traits totally beneficial to
if
them.
You have a bear with a red fur coat in the Arctic, would that survive?
A bear in the Arctic? A single bear?
Or however many bears.
No idea.
If they had red fur, would they be able to survive?
No idea. I would love to see that experiment.
Yeah.
It's logical that they wouldn't, because
that's an assumption. No, that's an assumption.
The prey would be able to see them from a mile away.
And so what? What if the bear was like?
And so they wouldn't be able to catch that prey. They would starve to death. They wouldn't pass that trait on.
Okay, and so were there bears that were pre-white bears then that hung out in the whiteness?
Yes, there were
of the
brown
snow?
bears.
And so because they're brown and not red, they made it.
Oh my God. Okay. So you were trying to give him an example of
right,
red bear, and
like I was saying, I think I was trying to explain how polar bears developed from brown bears, but he misinterpreted that.
Yeah, and the thing is, that you gotta think that it wasn't that Arctic condition. Okay, probably no bears survived up there because they were kind of stuck with a certain kind of prey, and they had to. Well, maybe not. I mean, like, there were some really big bears. They were a lot larger.
Yeah, but they didn't really live in that same kind of climate. They were more
but the ones that could have pounded on, they smelled the prey underneath the snow or the ice and pounded on the ice to break them. They wouldn't have had to have white fur in order to camouflage themselves. So, I mean, that's one of the techniques that polar bears use. But
I guess there are a few different ways to catch, like, seals and stuff.
Yeah, and there's, so there's a possibility.
And I know, like, polar bears don't just eat seals anyway, so.
Yeah, so there's a possibility that there was a brown bear population up there that did survive, but, didn't survive well until, and then when the mutation happened with white fur, it would have quickly spread through the population because they would have been a lot better at it.
Right.
So anyway.
Like, if you have a really beneficial trait, advantageous trait like that, it's going to spread pretty quickly.
Yep. Let's see what else we got here. By the way, randomly with all of the animals we see in the Arctic, I don't know what the hell. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, he doesn't. And all of it's random. It's just so happened that the ones who randomly started growing white fur happened to already exist and this happened, by the way, randomly with all the animals we see in the Arctic, right? Which is, him just being ridiculous and trying to.
He's trying to make it sound absurd.
Yeah. Yep.
As like with all the stuff you've highlighted here, I'm sure we could go for another 2 hours.
I know. We've gone for 2 hours.
Yeah. 2 hours, 5 minutes, it seems.
Yeah, that's way longer than I like to go. So I got shit happening. Anyway, there's more. I mean, there's
too much.
A lot of work, don't you think? Look
I'm surprised you went through the work with all of this.
I mean, I've gone, because I thought this was a really good illustration of ignorance.
A very illustrative conversation about how some of these people think.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's also an illustration of stupidity, which is willful ignorance. My definition of stupid is willfully ignorant. A lot of people are ignorant. I'm ignorant of a lot of things in cosmology and quantum mechanics.
We're all ignorant about some things because we're not experts in everything.
Right. But I don't go out there and talk to Sabine Hofstadter, whatever her name is.
Hofstadter. Yeah.
And try to make her look like an idiot because she knows physics and I have no understanding.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Okay, we can end this for now. God, my God, I'm still going. What the fuck is wrong with me? I spent like 3 days. Obviously.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You really went into detail here.
Yeah, I finally gave up at I think where you left. I watched the entire thing. And you're
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, I think we covered some of the main points. I mean,
I
said, we could go over more of it, but we might be repeating ourselves a little bit on some of it.
Yeah, well, this is, keep in mind, I've got this transcript in my Google Docs, and I can share it with you if you like. And, for future reference, if you want to find misconceptions. And it may help you if you get to the point where you need to explain it to somebody who actually wants to learn.
Yeah.
Basically, that dog needs. What does he want? Food?
He wants his food. Yeah. So now it's kind of a good time to wrap up anyway.
That's the way Snack is when he wants food. He comes up and he like if I'm sleeping in the chair, he'll put his paw on my head and shake my head, and then he'll go meow meow with this weak little meow like he's dying.
They know when they want to.
They know when they
want to be fed.
Okay, guys, we're going to end the stream.
Right. Thanks for joining us all. I hope you found something meaningful out of this random conversation with Jim Bob.
Anyway, okay. Goodbye, cruel world.
Bye.